So every couple of months, I like to tell you about the best movies that are free to watch right here on YouTube. And right now, I found 20 of the absolute best movies I've ever seen available for free right here on YouTube. So yes, YouTube always has a rotation of about 100 or more movies that are free to watch. They will have ad breaks like most YouTube videos, but they're right here, and I've put links in the top pinned comment down below so you can start watching some of these right away. This video is sponsored by AG1 by Athletic Greens, but I'll tell you more about them much later in the video. Right now, I've got a hidden gem pick that's actually one of Bill Paxton's final roles before he died in Mean Dreams. In this movie, Bill Paxton actually plays an abusive father, and he does a fantastic job, but his teenage daughter ends up running away with her new boyfriend. So it kind of turns into a road movie. They're on the run for a big portion of this movie, and it is a coming-of-age story, kind of a first love story. And again, you get a really killer performance from Bill Paxton that's way outside of what he normally does. It is such a shame he died so young. I always liked him, but it is cool that one of his final films had him do a really meaty role like this one. In fact, Mean Dreams reminds me a little bit of Badlands, directed by Terrence Malick, who actually directed my next pick on this list, The New World. Now, as far as storytelling goes, it's really not one of Terrence Malick's strong suits. He really goes for more of a visceral experience, something that feels like you're there, beautiful cinematography, with very loose storytelling. The World War II movie, The Thin Red Line, and The Tree of Life being two of his more popular and widely viewed films. But if you've seen those and you like the look and the experience, then The New World is kind of an amazing one. But you're not going to get a typical historical drama out of this movie. It almost feels like kind of a documentary, or like it was filmed with no script. Yet you get beautiful, beautiful cinematography of The New World, and there's some really stunning moments in this movie. But it is for patient viewers and really for art film lovers, and if you didn't like any of Terrence Malick's other movies, then this one's not really going to change your mind. But if that's not for you and you just want kind of an over-the-top action horror flick, Crawl is actually pretty exciting. Now, this is about a girl and her father trapped in a house during a hurricane that begins to be swamped by these giant alligators. So no, this is not Jaws with alligators. In fact, this movie goes into several silly directions multiple times, but the movie is self-aware enough to make all of that work. If you buy into this one early and just want to go for a wild ride, this is actually a pretty excellent production. If you're interested in the synopsis whatsoever, then I can tell you that Crawl delivers plenty of thrills, but if you want a more serious movie, you're going to want to go with one of the other picks on this list. Next up, I've got an underrated sci-fi flick starring Val Kilmer on a trip to Mars in Red Planet. This also stars Carrie-Anne Moss and the very recently deceased Tom Sizemore. Another one in a similar vein where if you want to take a movie very seriously, this is not going to be the one for you. It's not a stupid movie or anything like that, but it does stretch quite a bit. It's still a really fun sci-fi movie. You will have to overlook some outdated CGI in this movie. It's not terrible, but you know, the movie's from 2000. It's almost a quarter century old already, and some of the CGI doesn't quite hold up, but Val Kilmer holds up in this movie, and it's got some really great moments. But for sort of a mid-grade sci-fi flick you've probably either never seen or at the very least have forgotten about, Red Planet could be a great choice, especially if you're fans of anyone involved. Now I've got one that's a very serious movie, and it's very grim, but it's really well done. It's titled Apt Pupil. This was actually a major starring role for Brad Renfro, and in this movie he plays a high school student who begins to suspect that his neighbor is an escaped Nazi war criminal. And he's expertly played by Ian McKellen. One of the things I really like about this movie isn't just how effective it is at being really dark and creepy, but this is something that happened. There were lots of Nazis that escaped, and this movie's an interesting way to sort of look at a Nazi that maybe escaped. Even a fictional one like this, it still is just a completely different perspective that you wouldn't get from a World War II movie. But I do have a World War II movie next up on this list, and it happens to be one with a radically different perspective than you normally get in Empire of the Sun. Now this is a classic movie. It's directed by Steven Spielberg and is a really fantastic production. It's filled with amazing actors, particularly a very young Christian Bale. This is one of his first roles, and at this young age, he really helps carry a Steven Spielberg war movie. It's pretty fantastic stuff. But the movie's from 1987 and it mostly takes place inside this camp where he's growing up. And it can be quite upsetting, obviously, but another very different perspective. It's not a place we normally see. We're in this Japanese prison camp, brought to life perfectly by this big Steven Spielberg production, and then you get other amazing roles like one from John Malkovich. But if you're a big fan of Christian Bale and you've somehow never seen Empire of the Sun, make sure you catch it before it leaves YouTube. But my next pick on this list is another Empire movie, Empire Records.
You all belong in the loony bin. Every one of you. Forget you guys. I don't need you. You think you're so happy and you're so damn great because you work in a freaking record store. You think you're so superior.
This is a mid-90s cult classic that really just oozes that mid-90s vibe, better than almost any other movie you could think of, maybe with the exception of, I don't know, Clerks. It's got a killer soundtrack, a really fantastic cast, and not just the actors they've picked, but a really great cast of characters. Every character in this movie is really unique and stands out, especially for like a 90-minute sort of teen comedy movie. The characters are incredibly well fleshed out in this movie, and it's highly rewatchable, especially for people from my generation. I'm not really sure how people from younger generations would connect with kids hanging out in a record store, since they don't have record stores anymore. But it is a really fun movie. If you've never seen it and you're a fan of any of the actors involved, this is another one that you really just have to see because everyone in it is so fantastic, and every single character gets one or two really great moments in this movie too. I've got another comedy up next, but it's very different from your typical comedy. It's directed by Martin Scorsese and stars Robert De Niro as the king of comedy.
Oh, Jerry, I love this guy. Always coming up with these great lines. I love him. I love him. He's wonderful. You're wonderful. I tell you, I don't know what I'd do without you.
Rupert,
Anyway.
the bus is here. It's early. Try to be on time for once.
Now, don't get this confused with The Kings of Comedy. That's a completely different movie. This is the Scorsese 80s classic, where Robert De Niro plays Rupert Pupkin, a very passionate but very unsuccessful stand-up comedian. Jerry Lewis actually plays kind of a Johnny Carson type character in this. He does an amazing job in this movie, and it's very realistic. It feels like it's of that era and that it's authentic. And De Niro has this really kind of awful, grating personality in this movie. It's cringe humor, but it's cringe humor done by Martin Scorsese, and it's really fantastic. This too is filled with some great classic moments. If you're a fan of classic De Niro, Scorsese collaborations, movies like Goodfellas and Casino, Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, any of those, then The King of Comedy is very different from those, but I highly recommend you check it out. I've got yet another cult classic that I really can't believe is free on YouTube right now. It's a really special movie from Australia titled Wake in Fright. Now, this movie is a hit in Australia. I'm sure a lot of my Australian viewers are jumping up and down out of their seats right now, but I absolutely love this movie. Now, I will say, for the most part, I do think this is kind of for the art film crowd. It's slow-paced and fairly plotless. I mentioned a handful of Martin Scorsese classics. If you like old-school movies like Taxi Driver, I highly recommend you check this movie out. It's about a teacher who basically gets trapped in this small town that's full of men that drink the day away. I mean, even including movies like Beer Fest, I don't know that I've seen people consume this much beer on screen in a movie. It's pretty wild stuff. And the movie has some very interesting things to say about masculinity. One thing that I have to point out, though, I don't often do trigger warnings on this channel, but my goodness, there is a kangaroo hunt in this movie that features a lot, and I mean a lot, of kangaroos being shot for real. It's called the cull. It's a thing that they actually do to thin out the population in Australia, or at least they did at the time that this movie was made. So you're seeing real carnage on screen. It's great filmmaking. It makes a really strong point, but some people might get their minds blown by that if they've never seen anything shot for real before. Now, luckily, nothing and no one is being shot for real in my next pick, Hotel Rwanda. Now, I actually do not recommend this movie as a rewatch. If you've rewatched it more than once in your life, and you've enjoyed it, good for you. This is not the type of movie I need to see more than once, but it is still a very important movie, I think, and a very well done film. And not just the filmmaking. You've got an amazing performance from Don Cheadle. I have always loved Don Cheadle since he was just doing like small character bits. This is a really heavy role for him and really kind of put him in the spotlight, I think, more than he had been before this movie came out, and he really carries the film. As far as historical dramas about real events go, Hotel Rwanda does a fantastic job of telling the story, but also just really an amazing job of making you feel all the like just insane emotions some of these people must have been feeling. In case you're wondering, yes, I watch a ton of movies to do this on YouTube. Every single day, sometimes all day. It's a beyond sedentary job, so I've had to make physical activity part of my daily routine. I've also made today's sponsor, AG1 by Athletic Greens, part of my daily routine. AG1 is a convenient powder that you mix into an 8-ounce glass of water, and it's absolutely packed with 75 vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced ingredients, probiotics, and adaptogens. And as far as leafy green beverages go, it actually tastes pretty good. It's got a little bit of a tropical flavor and doesn't taste like it was scraped out from underneath a lawnmower, the way most green drinks taste. And the thing I love most about AG1 is how easy it is to just knock back that 8-ounce drink early in the day, and then you know you've got all those essential vitamins and minerals under your belt, allowing me to load up on all the protein I need to build strong muscle tissue as I approach 40. And not only do the ingredients in AG1 help support a healthy immune system, but when you use my link in the video description below, you'll actually get a free gift with your first order of AG1 that includes a year's supply of vitamin D3 and K2, which only further supports your immune system. And if you're just not sure it's for you, they are offering a 60-day money-back guarantee, which means you can try AG1 for 2 full months, decide you don't like it, and get a full refund, so there's really no risk. You're also going to get all this stuff, the big bag of AG1, this nice metal jar for storing it in the fridge, a nice premium bottle, metal scoop, all top quality stuff, plus that free gift of vitamin D3 and K2. Great deal, great money-back guarantee, but speaking of great stuff, let's talk about the rest of the movies on this list.
Now, I'm going to open this door. I want you to go through it and go into the locker room and close the door after you. I'm going to start firing through that door 15 seconds after you close the door. Let's go.
Longtime subscribers know I'm a Stanley Kubrick fan, but one of his earlier movies that doesn't really feel like a Kubrick film at all is also a just fantastic heist flick, The Killing. In typical Kubrick style, this does have plenty of twists and turns and really interesting moments, but it's also a pretty straightforward movie about a group of guys pulling off a heist at a racetrack. And for a movie that came out in 1956, it features some really classic heist movie beats. You know, them planning the heist, casing the joint, the whole thing. It's all in this movie, and it's really great. I do not think you need to be a fan of Stanley Kubrick to thoroughly enjoy this movie. In fact, if you haven't even liked some of his other movies, you still might really enjoy The Killing. Keep in mind, it's from 1956. It's going to have a slower pace than movies that are made today, but again, still top-notch filmmaking, excellent moments, and just a really dynamite heist movie. Another one I just can't believe they have available for free right now, the original Godzilla. Yes, the original uncut Japanese version, the version to watch if you're gonna watch the original Godzilla. I'm a fan of these movies. I even like the new ones. They're silly, they're fun, they always have been. A handful of the originals, including this one, are all part of the Criterion Collection. I mean, these are classic films that have held the test of time and really kind of spawned countless movies. If you've somehow never seen the original Godzilla, I highly recommend pursuing this version and just making a movie out of it. Get some Japanese food, sushi, whatever you want. It'll be a really cool experience, especially if you catch it before it leaves, because it will sooner or later, which is a good time to point out. If you're new to the channel and you like getting movie recommendations like this, definitely consider clicking that subscribe button, maybe even the bell icon, if you want to get notified as soon as I release these episodes. That way you don't, miss the movies before they're gone. Okay, my next pick on this list is a mid-90s thriller that takes place in a Texas border town. It stars Chris Cooper and a young Matthew McConaughey, and it's still a highly underrated and unknown movie, Lone Star.
You ever shoot a man who's looking you in the eye, Charlie? It's a whole different story, isn't it?
In this movie, Chris Cooper plays a sheriff of a Texas border town, and his predecessor, the sheriff before him, their skeleton is suddenly found, and it sparks an investigation. It's from 1996, and it feels like it. It's got a dated feel, but not an outdated feel. It's expertly done. It's a fantastic thriller. If you love thrillers that take place in Texas, movies like No Country for Old Men, I highly recommend checking out Lone Star. And I promise you, as someone who scours every streaming service, at least here in the US, this is a movie I don't know that I've ever seen available anywhere. It's free on YouTube right now for some reason. Last World War II movie on this list, I promise, but it's an exceptional one, Enemy at the Gates. This movie features some epic World War II battle sequences, but it's mostly about these two snipers, a German sniper and a Russian sniper, both played by Ed Harris and Jude Law, basically hunting each other. Now, the battle sequences, again, are just fantastic. There's a couple that bookend this movie, and they're really great. It's top-notch stuff. This came out not long after Saving Private Ryan, and while it's not as amazing as Saving Private Ryan, it is in a similar category. This one goes a little more Hollywood, but in kind of a fantastic way. I feel like the sniper hunt sequence that takes up the midsection of the movie is pretty fantastic. Even if it does stretch and go into some slightly far-fetched directions, it still manages to work and be a really thrilling World War II flick. But few movies on this list are more thrilling than my next pick, except maybe for my number one pick. But up next on the list is the classic Speed.
Pop quiz. Airport. Gunman with one hostage. He's using her for cover. He's almost to a plane. You're 100 feet away. What do you think? Shoot the hostage. What?
This is one, I promise you, I know most of you have probably seen it, most of you have probably enjoyed it. I promise you this movie holds up way better than most action movies from the 90s. Maybe with the exception of, I don't know, Point Break, also with Keanu Reeves. But if you didn't know, Keanu Reeves actually does some, not all, but some of his own stunts in this movie, including jumping into the bus in this one. And on that note, the movie itself features tons of practical effects and real stunts. It is a stunt-heavy movie, and they're all really exciting. This movie was also shot really well, so it still does look really fantastic today. This is another one, you could make a really great movie night out of this one. It's got lines you remember and you'll love, and again, the action just, it holds up better than almost anything else from the 90s. One of my favorite, and I mean absolute favorite historical dramas, and also easily one of my favorite movies that takes place on old wooden ships, is Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. Now, this is a Russell Crowe historical drama that came out not too long after Gladiator, and I don't believe it flopped at the box office, but it wasn't nearly as big of a hit as it probably could have been. This is a top-notch flick with some amazing battle sequences in it that feel very realistic. In fact, the PG-13 rating on this really is the only thing that hamstrings it from being an incredibly realistic experience. And while you get glimmers of life on a ship in movies like Pirates of the Caribbean, I'm hard-pressed to even call them glimmers. All of that stuff's fantasy. This really shows you what it might have been like to be on one of these battleships back then, and it's wild stuff. It's unbelievable that people spent their lives doing just this, making Master and Commander just a really incredible film that I think everyone needs to experience at least once. All right, as we patiently anticipate the arrival of Dune Part 2, we've got one of Denis Villeneuve's other films, Arrival. Now, I love what he does as a director. I think his storytelling abilities are just kind of unparalleled. Really fantastic stuff, and this is a really interesting concept to start with. They do sort of pull at your heartstrings, maybe a little too hard for my taste in this movie, but it is an amazing sci-fi film about these gigantic, I guess we can call them UFOs, that descend upon the Earth, and it's up to scientists to figure out what is actually going on. And basically what you get with this movie is humans trying to learn to communicate with alien life, and it depicts it in a really realistic feeling way. I mean, for a movie about giant alien spaceships that descend on the Earth, this movie feels like it's actually happening more than most other alien invasion movies, making it kind of chilling at times, but it's also an incredibly interesting look at what a visitation from aliens might be like, and it's very different from what you normally see in movies, which I highly appreciated, on top of it just being expertly directed by Denis Villeneuve. I'm a big fan of him as a director, can't wait for Dune Part 2. Watching Dune Part 1 would be a good primer for it, but so would watching Arrival. Alright, I got another old school classic on this movie that actually also stars Robert De Niro, but also James Woods and a very young Jennifer Connelly in Once Upon a Time in America. Now this is Sergio Leone's American epic, and it is a beautiful movie. I mean, just absolutely stunning cinematography all the way through. It's a real slow burn, but anyone that's a fan of gangster movies needs to see this one. There's some kind of dark elements in this one, almost surprisingly dark for a movie from this time period, but the movie itself isn't overly dark. It's just telling this story of these Jewish gangsters in America. You get an amazing look at Prohibition-era America in this, and again, there's an absolutely beautiful one. Gangster movie lovers, though, this is kind of required viewing for you. And then another movie with some gangster-esque elements is LA Confidential. This also stars Russell Crowe, and not only do I love his character in this movie, Guy Pearce is amazing in this movie. I mean, everybody's great in it, but you get an amazing look at 1950s Los Angeles. You follow the criminals, you follow the cops, you follow reporters. It's got this really amazing vibe to it, this pulpy sort of vibe. And for a movie from 1997, this movie looks fantastic. It looks like it just came out yesterday. In terms of things in this genre, in this time period in LA, I don't know that anything other than maybe Chinatown beats LA Confidential. And then my final pick, I'm sorry folks, it was on a recent video, but I haven't seen it available for free anywhere before now. It's also on YouTube right now, James Cameron's True Lies.
I'm not a terrorist. I'm actually a complete coward. If I ever saw a gun, I'd no, please don't kill me.
I remember years ago, this is one I wanted to see. I have it on DVD, and it's a really terrible copy. It's standard definition. It's a small. It was unwatchable, and I'm not being a snob. Unwatchable. I couldn't find it anywhere to watch. It was really frustrating. Now it's free here and on Tubi, if you prefer to watch things on Tubi. And what a fun movie! James Cameron knows how to do action unlike anybody else, and True Lies is a hilarious movie at the same time. It does a great job of doing both things. Slick, really well filmed action. The movie looks like Die Hard or something. It's just a beautiful action movie. Yet everything that's happening is pretty funny. All the situations that they're in are great. And it's just this amazing balance where it's not being too silly and it's also not taking itself too seriously. And the action in this movie, for the most part, is all real. It's all real stunts. They're really blowing up that bridge when you see it blow up. There's real Harriers. It's all fantastic stuff. I mean, it's James Cameron. It's hard to get much better than this for like an action comedy. And again, it's not been available anywhere for the longest, so definitely check it out if it's been a while since you've seen it. But that is the list. Thanks again to AG1 for sponsoring another video. Don't forget to go check out their link in the description to get that free gift. But I will keep making these videos as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special YouTube episode, and you will see me on the next one.